Hi guys, you're welcome to Web Technologies. We'll be talking about how to create a simple REST API in PHP. I will be using an electronics store as a case study, whereby we're actually going to be setting up the database, reading the products they have. We're going to create a product. We're going to read one product at a time. We have the access to update products, and we can delete products. We can also search for products and read the categories of products that they have right in the store. So we're going to actually be creating this, and it's a mind-blowing application which is actually going to teach you a lot when it comes to REST API using PHP. So let's get started. I'm actually going to use the localhost where I have XAMPP control panel as my localhost that actually gives us Apache and MySQL, which is very important in integrating or using PHP programming language. So we're actually going to be heading straight to the PHP My Admin, whereby we'll get to create the database, get to create the tables involved, and also passing some dummy data into the database. I'll be exposing the source code after the tutorial so that you can actually pick that up and you can use it in the course of your training. So I'm actually going to create a new database. I hope you guys understand how to set up the local server using XAMPP. Just download XAMPP. Either you're using Mac, using Linux, or you're using Windows operating system. Download XAMPP, the latest version. Run it. You don't need to install PHP or install any other dependency. Just run it, set it up, and move to localhost PHP My Admin. So right there in the databases, I'll be creating the database involved in this particular integration, which I'll be calling API DB. Let's make it simple. API underscore DB. I want you to follow along with my explanation. So you have that set, and you will need to actually create the table. Well, we'll be creating two tables. The first table will be categories, while the second table will be products. And we're actually going to be dumping dummy data into these tables. So I'll actually be showing you. So I'll be passing in the SQL syntax of the create table. So just paste that right there. So create table, if not exist the categories, whereby we have the ID, name, description, and the created date, time, and also when it's been modified. So I'm actually going to run this using Go. So we have that created, the categories table, and we actually need to also create one more table, which is the products table. So I'm actually going to be copying out the SQL syntax and paste it right there. So let's create the products table, paste the syntax, whereby we're going to have the fields as ID, name, description, price, category, ID, when it's been created and when it's modified. So I click on Go to actually create that. That's fine. We have the two tables created, and we can easily look at the structure of the categories. Let's get to look at the structure. ID, name, description created. This is auto increment and is actually going to be the primary key. And let's look at the products. The structure, you can have it the ID, name, description, price, category ID, created and modified time, and also the ID as the primary key. Now we're going to be passing in some dummy data into the categories table. So I'm actually going to be copying the SQL syntax. So back to the categories table, and I'm actually going to run this syntax to insert into categories the ID, name, description, that's the fields, and also the values, So I'm actually going to run that quickly. We have that set right inside the categories, and we can browse to actually see the data we have. Can you see that? So we can as well pass in values into the products. So I'm actually going to be copying this SQL syntax for that as well. So let's go to the SQL, paste out the dummy data. Now we have these as insert into products, the ID, name, that's the fields, and also the values. So I click on Go to actually pass that into products. You can see we have that set right there, so we can easily browse through the details. Can you say we have up to 30 products? That's fine. So from here, we're actually going to be heading straight to the source, whereby we're actually going to be creating some files. We must have the database PHP, which is used for connecting to the database. We're going to have the products PHP file that contains the properties and methods for product database queries. We also have the categories that contains the properties and methods for the category database queries. So let's quickly go to bracket.io, which is actually going to be the development environment for this particular API, whereby we have the category, as I've said, the config. The config is going to have the database.php. The objects, we have the products.php and the category.php, while the product itself is going to actually house the create PHP that will actually accept posted products data to the saved database, the delete PHP that will accept a product ID to delete a database record, the read.php that will output JSON database from products database records. We have read1 PHP that will accept product ID to read a record from the database, and we have the update PHP file that will accept a product ID to update a database record. So right in the category, we're only going to have a one file called the read PHP that will output JSON data based from category database. So let's get digging. Now we have to get ready to code. So right there in the config subfolder, we're actually going to create a new file, which we'll be calling database.php. So I want you to follow along. So let's start. We have the anchor tag of PHP. That's fine. So let's have a class. This OOP, object-oriented programming. So I want you to follow along. And we're going to specify the database credential. That's fine. So we're going to have a private. This for the host, which will be localhost. That's fine. We're going to have private. This is actually going to be the DB name. So it actually depends on what you use as your DB name. I use API DB, which you saw. We're going to have for the username, which is root. Root has no password, if you know that, private. But if you're actually going for production, it's advisable or it's recommended to actually create a username with password. Highly recommended. And we're going to have another field called, this time public, which is actually going to be the connection. Call that connection. So let's get to see how to connect to our database. So we get the database connection. Now we need a function or a method to handle this. Get connection. So we're going to call this particular class connect equals to null at this point. Now let's try the connection. So for this connection equals to instantiating new PDO, now I'm passing MySQL host equals concatenating this host, concatenating the DB name equals so we get to also concatenate with this DB name, that's the value. You see that? Same thing goes for the username. Same thing goes for the password. That's fine. So we close that right there. So we have that set. Now we call this class the connection. If executed using the execute method, now we need to set names as the UTF-8 standard. So we need to catch the PDO exception. Give an exception object. So you echo connection error concatenated with the exception message. Get message. Just this way. And you're fine. So after this, you need to return this connection. Very important. You have to set right. So you save out. Now you have your database connection. About you test the host, which is this, the DB name, which is this, with the username, with the password, and if there's an error, the connection error pops out with the message of the connection. You need to return this connection. So after the connection has been set, we need to create the product PHP right inside the objects folder. So we need to create a new file right here. We call it product read.php. So right there we have the opening PHP tag and also the closing PHP tag. That's fine. So we need to create a class called products. This class, we first of all look out for the database connection. And table name. Where you have the private connection. So have the private table name. I will give you a table. You know, we set the table name when we actually created the fields. We get to look at that now. Of products. If we can remember, we have that set right there. See the table name called products. And let's look at the structure. We have this field. So we'll make a reference to this field and we have to create an object of this field. Back to our text editor. So we will create the object properties. The first property, the public ID. The second, public, just follow the fields we created. That's just it. Name. We have public. Description. Price. Public. Category ID. Public ID, name, description, price, category ID, category name created, just like what we have right in the fields. Name, description, price, category ID, category name, and so on. This for the products. Okay. Let's move on. We need to create the read PHP that will actually read those data from the database. So we're going back to our text editor. Right there in the product folder, we need to create a PHP file called read.php. Let's get that set. But our product has not been completed. We need to call the constructor, and pass it. Right, let's finish this up. We need to call the constructor with the DB as data base connection. So let's finish that up. We call the public function constructs. And we pass the DB as the parameter. So this connection equals to the DB. That's fine. Save that, right? So back to the read.php that we actually add. So this is actually going to speed out some stuff. So let's create the PHP anchor tag. Now we need to call, let's give it the closing, so now we'll forget that. Right there we need to call a header. How about we say access control allow origin. Just this way. Close that right there. Give another header. That will be for the UTF-8. This is a standard way to actually code in PHP alone without much HTML. This is when we talk about APIs strictly on PHP. Now we're talking that the application to come in JSON, JavaScript object notation, set. So it should actually be UTF-8 so that it's going to be readable in all platforms. Set, other sets. Now let's include the database and object files. So include once, we call the config, we need it, we need the database.php. Goes this way. We also need products. So we get to instantiate the database and product objects. Let's instantiate database objects. So we call the database, instantiating it, the database, pass that in, and we call the DB object equals to database get connection. That's fine. So let's initialize the objects. So we call the products, new products, pass pd as parameter. That's fine. So we need to query the product. So now we pass stmt which goes to product. Read all. Get a row count. That's this way. So we're going to check if more than 0 record is found. So we check if more than 0 is found. So here goes our if statement. Number is greater than 0. I'm going to do something here. First of all, got the data, we'll make it empty. Second, we need a counter. That's fine. Now we need to retrieve the table contents. Our fetch method is faster than fetch all. So we're going to use a while loop. Now the row equals to empty. Use the fetch PDO. You need to fetch associate. Goes this way. Pass this now there. Now we need to extract the row. So we call the extract passing row as parameter. And we now have to do some data binding. So let's get to do that. So pass that into data. Concatenate equals to. So we are trying to create a structure, for the JSON. So we're binding it. Creating the structure for the JSON. Now just look at the way it goes. So actually going to learn a lot from these. Simply goes concatenate equals to. So we give it will be the ID following. Okay. Have this set. Still have it set this way. Don't make any mistake with this. No, it looks. Have the ID, concatenate with a single string. Now, this goes with a comma, following space, close it out. Just this way. Now you have another one, which is actually for the name, the first string. Pass name into this, you close it out, give a colon, set that right, give a space, give a space with the name, give a space, this, single colon, multiple, comma, don't need this, need a single colon, single one, close already. Let's do for the description. So we go with description. Set this way. Okay. Entity, the code. So now we're going to pass in the parameters will be description. Just what trying to construct how the, I know you can run into a lot of mistakes here, but just take your time to figure it out. Dealing with a lot of single colon and semicolon. Comma, single colon, close it right there. So we have for the price, single colon, double colon, price, give it single colon, give it dot, price, a single colon, a single one, with a comma, close this right, because this is just like an integer, so you don't need to specify HTML entity encode. Another one, data, is for the category ID. Give category ID. Lock it out. Give a single colon. It's fine. Other sides. Category. Mask ID. Alternate. Single with a comma. A single with this. The last but not the least, category name. Right there. Give this. Give this. So that finishes. Now we need to close the data. after creating structure of the JSON. So now we have the data. Now we call the x variable less than number, this itinerary to add a comma. And a space. So increment that's right there. So that's the JSON structure. Now we need to get a JSON format output to echo place. Okay. Data. That's it. So we would have an else statement. Else. Echo empty array. That's just it. Echo an empty array. Empty array. There's nothing there, it echoes an empty array. That's fine. Save that right there. We have that set. Now we need to create another file. What about we're going to call, before we actually create another file, we need to pass something right into this the product PHP before it can actually show. You know, we need to pass in the read all. If you should notice, we instantiated this particular function, or let's call it method, the read all method. So we actually need this right in the product, or else it's not going to show. So let's quickly include this method. So to actually read products, so we have function read all. So we're going to select all query, pass it into value query equals to, now let's run a select statement, scene name as category name. If you're familiar with SQL, by just giving it the fields another name, so that will be shorter, p id p name p description, and now we're going to have p price, category id, p created, and this is actually going to be from, you get it, from so we're going to Let's just maintain something of this nature from what we're doing. Now we concatenate to this table name. You get that? So we're going to do a left join. I went all down. So we're going to do a left join. The categories. C, which is actually going to be on P category ID equals to C ID. So we still need to order it. Order by P created description. Have the set right. So we need to prepare the query statement. I'll call the stmt equals to this connection. Okay. Pass query right there. So we execute the query, calling stmt execute. Over here. I'll return stmt. It's fine. This is just out. With this query, we actually select a name as the category name. It's category name. The PID, the P name, description, price, category, ID. When it's created from this particular table name, we're concatenating it to the left join of the categories table on the category ID, which is C equals to ID, and we order it by the created time to a descending order. So that's just it. Save that right there. So let's get to launch this right there in our browser to see the JSON notation of all products. So let's move to browser. The new tab, we're going to call localhost. Now we're going to point to the structure we have. We have API first, because if you should look at the directory, we have API before our products. So we just have to follow it that way. Product. Let's get to look at it again before we get to have the read PHP. So read PHP. Can you get to see JSON notations of all values we have right inside the database? But this is model up. There is a website which is actually JSON beautifier or reader. You can just goggle that out to actually get you. So let's actually use this JSON viewer to actually view it better. So I'm going to copy this, paste it right inside this JSON portion, and let's get to see it. Can you see that we have it structured better? This is it. We have for the ID 60, Rolex watch, description, luxury watch, price, category ID with a category name. We actually integrated two tables. If you should notice from what we did right there in the code, when we did a left join to the categories, so that we're actually going to pick the category name. We actually didn't use the field created afterwards, but that's still fine. You can still maintain the source. A left join actually brought in the category name from the categories database back to the browser. Can you see this? So we have the JSON format for this particular application. Now you can see it's beautifully at the right. We have the Rolex watch as an ID of 60 with a price, its ID, and the category name, which is fashion, which can also be traced back to the products. Can you see that? So let's browse. Can you see that? Rolex watch 60, 25,000. Its category ID 1, and now a join came up with the categories, which actually got this name as the category name: fashion, electronic, motors, movies, books, and sports. So that's just it. That's fine. So we'll be doing more. This is the first stage whereby we get to read all data values right in our database. Now we will have the ability to create our own products. We need an API to create that. We also will need an API to create just one product. We also need an API to read, one product, not just all as we've had. And we need an API also to update the database. We also need an API to delete a product. So these are things that will be going through right in this bumper package of API lessons right in PHP. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with other modules. Bye bye for now. Please, please, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. This actually encourages me. Thank you very much. Have a lovely time. Bye bye.